What's up, 2K crew? It is that time of the week again. It is podcast time. And man, 2Ks, we got a hell of an NFL show ready for these folks. Are you ready for this, man?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to talk about not only kind of give you an update of what's going on, right up to the minute. Then we're going to give you a little bit of predictions. We're going to talk about some fantasy football. We got a whole lot of shit lined up for you guys and gals. So if you are on the YouTube side, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we go live. And if you are on the podcast side, go ahead and give us a follow, give us a like. And at any time, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and drop us a comment, either live right now and we'll feature you on the show, or if you're watching the replay, I will go ahead and comment, and I will most likely comment back. So with that being said, 2Ks, I did go ahead and fix the graphics. So let's roll this intro real quick.
It's the Turbo and 2K show.
All right. Well, let's jump into it, 2Ks. I made some graphics here, and I'm seeing one of them probably isn't going to work. So, and no, it's not. So let me see if I can fix this one really quick, ladies and gentlemen, because it will be worth it, I promise. So while I'm doing that, 2Ks, it's not gonna let me fix it because it's, oh, there we go. Let's talk about some fantasy football real quick. Unfortunately, both you and I are going to miss the playoffs. It doesn't happen that often. So I'm kind of upset by that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that just seemed like it was like the year of injuries for me, and you had like the worst luck of anybody
with some injuries mixed in there as well.
I mean, obviously the Derrick Henry injury was huge for you, but I think like especially the first half of the season for you were putting up good points, but were being outscored because of just everybody just seemed to have like their best week of the entire season was always against you.
Maybe I'm like the fantasy football Bill Belichick equivalent. Yeah. I just got that, the target on my back. Everyone wants, everyone brings their A game when they're playing Turbo, even though I don't think I've won a fantasy league in like 6 years, but do usually make the playoffs. So this was it was one of those things. I had something very much in common with Notre Dame, as I was in contention going into today, even with like the bad luck you said, and even with some injuries down the way. I mean, hell, I was to give you, if it makes you feel any better, I was starting Rex Burkhead as one of my running backs. So yeah, it was definitely to kind of wrap up the year so far. I mean, I don't think to this point the 17 games really impacted the fantasy world by any means, but I think it seemed to me like the bye weeks happened later into the season. Like they spread them out more. Yeah. So maybe that had a little bit of it of maybe a little bit had to do with it. But I'm like you. I really don't. I probably pay a little bit more attention to bye weeks when I'm drafting, whereas you, if I remember right, you really don't give a shit about that.
No, I never even really looked into it. And it was different this year. It seemed like you said, they spread everything out. I mean, obviously you add a week to the season, that changes some things up. But yeah, it seemed like, when you get to this point where like this is the last week until the playoffs start, where you get to this point, normally you're done with the buys, and it seemed like this week was a big time bye week for for about everybody. So
I mean, in particular, and like I said, we'll get into the league leaders here coming up. But if you were a Jonathan Taylor owner going into the playoffs, if you were on the edge, you really, really needed him today. Unfortunately, like you said, it was a bye week. It was a bye week.
I think it's safe to say that most people that owned Jonathan Taylor probably weren't trying to win this week to make it to the playoffs. If you own Jonathan Taylor, you're probably at the top of your league.
I would hope so.
In most cases.
I would hope so. But yeah, you never know. But before we jump into this 2Ks, I did want to take a second and give a big shout out to Pat McAfee and his crew.
Yeah.
For those of you that do not know, that's one of the podcasts I follow daily, and him and his boys. I mean, you can go back and take a look at his story, how he, obviously was the punter and kicker for many years with the Indianapolis Colts. After that, kind of went into a little bit of the broadcasting side with ESPN, got his radio start with Barstool. They kind of, it was one of those things where Dave Portnoy was like, yeah, just come hop on with us and see what happens. They kind of went their separate ways, and now Pat and the boys have been doing this, I think he said 5 or 6 years now, and it was announced, I believe it was Wednesday, that he signed a huge contract with FanDuel. And because I want to say for the past couple of years, FanDuel has been their sports book of choice. And, in particular, since, here in Michigan and in Indiana and a couple of the surrounding states here, we do have legalized sports gambling now, which I don't know if is a good thing or a bad thing. It's definitely good because it kind of adds a little bit of a spin on the game. I mean, you can, if you're betting on a game that you have no horses in, I mean, it definitely adds a little bit of intrigue. But a lot of times your bank account really doesn't like it. But kudos to Pat and the boys for signing this huge deal. And not only did he sign it, he took a lot of his initial money, donated it to a bunch of charities, took care of all of his boys on his crew, and it was later leaked out. I believe it was a 4-year, $160 million contract. So to kind of put that into perspective, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say Joe Rogan signed with Spotify, 10 years, $100 million. So believe it or not, the Pat McAfee crew is making more than Joe Rogan and his crew. And Pat and them probably get a 10th, 20% of the views that or listens or downloads that Rogan does. And yeah, that was the I'm actually losing like 191 to 48 right now, 2Ks. But not that my team does suck this week. However, mine are yet to play. Yeah. But enough of that. Like I said, I just want to give a big shout out to Pat and the boys. But let's jump into these. Start off with the receivers, 2Ks. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Let me get to the. So, and you haven't. I did these through today, or leading up to today. So these numbers do not include what these gentlemen have done so far. At number 5, we've got Jamar Chase, the rookie for the Bengals. I did not see his numbers going in or after today, but I think it's safe to say he is over 1,000 yards now. He's going into today was 958, 7 receiving touchdowns. Number 4, Debo Samuel, which he was just over 1,000 yards, 1,006 and 5 touchdowns. Out of everyone on this list, 2Ks, I think he was the one that kind of shocked me the most because he's got a whole different role now in that San Francisco offense. And it's kind of, with Kittle healthy, with Debo not only catching the ball, but is seeing a lot of snaps in the backfield. It's kind of, he's kind of taken that almost like Cordero Patterson type role. So what are your thoughts on him?
Debo, he's a stud. He's a stud. And he's one that kind of fooled me because with going into the draft this year, I really wasn't even looking into him. It seems like injuries have kind of played a factor with him. He's had a little short stint with injuries this year. I want to say he missed. I know he missed the game last week, and I believe I'm right on this, but I believe he missed a game earlier in the season, maybe a game, maybe 2, but I think it was only 1. So missed a couple games. Still, in the top 5 for receivers. Probably after today's game, I did see that he scored a touchdown today, which I think it came out from the backfield.
Yeah,
but that's to me that's it with him. Is he's not just a threat as a receiver because of all the injuries that the Niners have had this year at running back. He's got, he probably averages 7-8 carries a game.
You hit the nail right on the head. He had 8 carries for 37 yards and a tud, and receiving had 1 catch. He was only targeted once, one catch for 22 yards.
Yep. Yeah. So when he's healthy, I mean, and that's what makes him so good as a receiver is his yards after the catch. So to move him as a running back and just give him the ball. Guys like that, you just have to find ways to give him the ball, whether it's finding him in the passing game or just turning around and handing him the ball. you have to just figure out a way to get him the ball.
And, if you guys have followed the show for any amount of time, you know that 2Ks is not the biggest Jimmy G fan, but when you give him some more options there and that line is healthy, the weapons are healthy, you see, I think, definitely not a world beater by any means. He's not in that elite category. But with a lot of the shitty quarterback play we've seen this year, I think he's kind of middle of the road. He's serviceable, kind of a game manager. Is he going to throw you for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns? No.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you have probably your most talented player. I mean, no disrespect to George Kittle, he's right there, but Debo probably the most talented player on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes to show you that your quarterback sucks when you're turning around and just handing him the ball 8 times because you can't throw him the ball 8 times. So, yeah, I have nothing good to say about Garoppolo. And the reasoning, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. You have a wide receiver like Debo Samuel. You have a tight end like Kittle. I mean, you have studs in that lineup. The rookie running back in Mitchell has just he's been a stud this year when he's been healthy. Unfortunately, there's been a couple games. He's missed a few games because of injury. But when he's on the field, he's a stud. So there's weapons all around him. Mm-hmm. I mean, the future, the quarterback of the future is on that roster. Yeah. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
and he's got to stay healthy too.
Yeah, and I'm honestly shocked at this point of the season we haven't seen more of Trey Lance. Getting back to your point, yes, there was a time where Jimmy G was hurt and he was supposed to take over, and it really didn't matriculate as best as. I mean, I had him on my fantasy team for the longest time just because I thought
there's a lot of people saying that he was going to be the number one rookie quarterback, and at the beginning of the year,
Mac Jones kind of shit on that.
Yeah.
He kind of shit all over that.
And he was kind of the one that nobody was talking about, really.
Yeah. Well, he was kind of the boring one out of everybody. Yeah. He's not the mobile threat that Fields, even Wilson, I mean, and Lance. So he's like your pocket passer, which in this league isn't sexy.
And in his defense, he walked into the best
100%
system. I mean, you walk into a Belichick system.
Yeah.
The defense being as good as they are. I mean, that Patriots defense is legit.
That's something that most people really don't recognize. Is if you remember back to last year, there was like 6 starters on that defense that just said, "I'm not playing this year. I'm not playing this year." So Stephon Gilmore was one of them. He's since moved on.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, how does their defense just keep on
growing these guys?
I mean, they don't even rebuild. They just reload, and they let these guys go. These big names, Gilmore, top 5 corner in the league, and they just let him go this year.
And they're better without him.
And he's not the only one. It seems like they do it every year.
Oh yeah.
Where they let these guys just walk, and then they turn out better. It's unbelievable to me.
I guess that's why Belichick makes the big money. Yeah. But getting back to this list, number 3 is your boy, Davante Adams, 1,083 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he's getting ready to kick off right now.
Absolute stud.
Out of all the ones that we've listed so far, you would think Adams is kind of going to have a leg up on these guys, just because Debo and Jamar are relatively young. It's Jamar's rookie year. Debo, I think, is his third year, second or third year. And on top of that, Davante's got the best quarterback on this list to get the ball from. Mm-hmm. So, yes, he is a stud. He is a 100% stud, arguably the best receiver in the league. Has been for probably the last 2 or 3 years. But you got A-Rod throwing you the ball, which kind of makes it a little easier. Kind of makes it a little easier because I don't think anyone in the NFL throws a prettier football than Aaron Rodgers.
For sure. And I think with Davante, though, a little bit the numbers go down for him because Green Bay has something that they haven't had in a long time, and that's a defense. So they haven't been playing from behind. They haven't been playing. Since week 1 when they obviously took just a lick from the Saints and everybody was in panic mode. Since that time, it just seems like this team has just consistently gotten better throughout the year. Defense is the one that just jumps off the charts to me is how good their defense is. So it seems like they're always in the lead. Therefore, they don't need to throw the ball a whole lot. Aaron Rodgers has been nursing the toe injury for a long time, and A.J. Dillon has kind of come out of nowhere. So this team is more balanced. They're not throwing the ball near as much. Look, if this team was to play like Rodgers 5-6 years ago when he was throwing the ball all over the place and they hardly ran the ball, Devontae could put up numbers with any receiver in the
100%.
league. This year, he just hasn't really had to do that, put up those huge numbers. They've relied a lot more on the running game, and they've relied a lot more on that defense.
And what's scary about this Packers team, 2Ks, and even before we went live, I said, well, this is going to be a fucking snoozer, even with it being a Bears fan. But the one thing that does intrigue me is Fields is back after the rib injury. See how he does. He's looking very mobile, very sharp so far. But the scary part about this Packers team is, yes, they're leading the AFC North. That's not a shock. They have the second best record in the NFC. That really doesn't shock me either. However, they're just starting to get dudes back.
Yeah.
David Bakhtiari hasn't played at all yet. And this team's only going to get better, which is scary, which is scary to think. Now, what I think is even more scary is they're showing Aaron Rodgers right now is if this team does win the Super Bowl, if this team does go all the way, yes, I know there's still a lot more football left to be played, but does he stay in Green Bay? And to kind of piggyback that question, 2Ks, I have a feeling if A-Rod leaves, Adams leaves. Rodgers stays, Adams stays. Could both of them make more money potentially outside of Green Bay? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
But is it? I 100%. I would bet my yearly paycheck to say that if Aaron Rodgers walks, Devontae Adams is no longer a Packer.
Yeah, and with what we saw earlier in the year with Jordan Love,
maybe vice versa as well.
Yeah, and with what we saw earlier in the year when Rodgers was out with. Jordan Love is not the answer, and maybe he will be in the future. But
everybody keeps saying not yet.
He's got a long ways to go, and so obviously Devontae's not going to like that. I'm with you. I think there's a good chance that it's going to come down to Rodgers' decision on what Adams wants to do. But if the two of them want to compete and they want to win championships, I don't see any reason why they would leave.
There's no easier route to the playoffs.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you go anywhere else, you start thinking about Rodgers. The conversation at the beginning of the year was Rodgers possibly in Denver. And Denver's got a lot of problems. Denver's got a lot of issues. Pittsburgh, they're not even close right now. I mean, we watched that game on Thursday night, and everybody wants to sit there and point the finger at Chase Claypool and look, he is an idiot. I'm not going to argue that one bit. But they got. You could drive buses through some of those holes in that first half that Dalvin Cook was running through. They got issues on the defensive side of the ball.
There was pictures on Twitter that I'm pretty sure you and I could have broke 30-yarders.
I think Cook said it himself after the game when he was talking to the reporter. He was like, I'm pretty sure you could have got a couple yards talking to Aaron Andrews.
Yeah. So hey, EA's an athlete, dude. EA is an athlete. But no, you're 100% right. I've watched a ton of football my entire life. Maybe it's the different camera angles, but I don't ever remember seeing a dude spring that many times, that many yards, untouched.
Yeah, no.
Untouched. And not even close to being touched. These holes, you were right, those holes were 5 to 6 yards wide.
And look.
And the whole center of the field's open.
You're facing Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
He's not going to gash you. So you would think that you don't have to really worry about.
Without Adam Thielen as well.
Yeah, you can pretty much start boxing guys in. Yeah, exactly, without Thielen. So yeah, Jefferson, Jeff is a stud. He's one of the best, going to be one of the best receivers in the league for a very long time. But it's just him, and then you got a mediocre quarterback in Cousins. So it's not, you can basically stack up the box and be ready and try to take care of the run.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh just got destroyed. I mean, they just got freaking destroyed.
Dalvin Cook coming off a separated shoulder or some shit. But no, that leads us right to number 2 case. Jeff, 1,209 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, mind you, just like we said,
with a very mediocre quarterback.
Yeah, and this dude is what most people would pencil in as a number 2 receiver because Thielen's been there doing his thing. And, I mean, not taking anything away from Adam Thielen because I think both of them do well because of each other. Yeah. Whereas I think Thielen got a lot of credit when Diggs was traded and he was the stud. He still put up numbers. Still put up numbers. But you had both, because you really can't double both of them. You really can't double both of them, so they help each other. But yeah, Jeff's a stud. And that was one of those trades that with Buffalo, I think both teams won. There really wasn't a loser in that. Buffalo got their dude in Diggs. Him and Josh Allen have been balling out ever since he got there. And you get this young stud in Minnesota that I think fits that offense perfectly. I would kind of equate Kirk Cousins the same plateau as Jimmy G.
Sure.
They're not great.
Yep.
They're not horrible. They're serviceable. Is Kirk Cousins way overpaid? Absolutely. Absolutely, 112%. But yeah, there's hands down. He's definitely a top 5. I didn't realize he'd be a top 2 stat wise.
Yeah.
But kudos to him. Kudos to him.
And then you look back at Joe Burrow at LSU there and and his Heisman season, and you think, well, he had 2 guys that are in this top 5 that we were just talking about, and Jamar Chase and J. Jeff. That team, it just shows you how loaded that offense was on that team. Like, I mean, just to have 2 receivers like that, two arguably top 5 receivers in the game. I mean, this year fantasy numbers wise, they are. I would say that, they're both very young. Obviously, Chase being this is his rookie season, but
I honestly think at the end of their careers, Chase is going to have better numbers than J. Jeff, but I think they're both going to be amazing.
Chase is he just looks like a wide receiver when you're looking at him. I mean, he fits the profile.
He's got a better quarterback. Than Jefferson does.
I agree.
Well, let's get to the number 1. I'm pretty sure it's not a shock leading up to this. It's Cooper Kupp at 1366 with 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns.
And hasn't played his game yet this week.
No.
He'll play tomorrow night.
And what's weird is that he's putting up these numbers, and really haven't heard much from him the last handful of weeks. It seemed like he put up a lot of these numbers in like the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. He was having 2 and 3 touchdown games and 150 yards, and Stafford's kind of cooled off. I don't know what's going on there.
If you watch a lot of Rams games, and I've watched a lot of them over the years,
they got a big one tomorrow night.
They're the catalyst of that offense, and he has been for the last 2-3 years, is Robert Woods. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't putting the numbers up this year. Although before his injury this year, his numbers were starting to get better. Then I think it took a little bit. There was a learning curve.
He was definitely on pace for over 1,000 yards.
Yes, there was a learning curve with him and Stafford though. And then once he got it going and everything was rolling, it was good. But they do so many things, running him in motion.
Yeah.
They do a lot of things, a lot of the end arounds and everything where they give him the ball and a lot of the short yardage pickups and stuff the big plays. They might not look like real flashy plays, but he extends drives, picks up big time first downs, and then opens up everything else for everybody else. The guys like Cooper Kupp and I think that once he went down with the ACL injury, this Rams offense just hasn't been the same yet. You're still trying to. I think everybody's still trying to kind of learn Odell. Odell's been all right since he's been there. He hasn't been, like Odell with the Giants, but he's been better than what he was with Cleveland.
Oh God, yes.
And he hasn't been a huge distraction up to
He's got a little better dude to throw him the ball.
Yes, yes. And he hasn't been a distraction really there, like everybody kind of thought he was going to be. And he probably will be eventually, but. Yeah, the thing with Kupp to me is his numbers are still good, and he's going to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy football at the end of this year. But that Robert Woods injury to me was huge for him.
I think too, to kind of add to that, the injury conversation is the Austin Eckler injury. He's been banged up, the last half of the season, and as versatile as that dude is, getting back to your point. Getting the short yards, getting the important yards, getting the tough yards. I mean, if you watch this dude on Instagram, some of the we've talked about it on the show here. Just pound for pound is probably one of the strongest dudes in the NFL. One of the most fit dudes in the NFL. And partner that with very, very awesome feet, very good vision and awareness and hands. Having a dude like that, kind of is similar to like a Christian McCaffrey, but they don't use him nearly as much because they don't have to. There's plenty of other weapons around. But yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Well, speaking of CMC and then running backs, let's look at the top 5 rushers, 2Ks. Now, I did want to point out on this graphic here, you will notice that Derrick Henry is not listed. Obviously, Henry went out with a foot injury, and Let me see here. All right, let's see if this is it. I did have it pulled up. Here we go. As it sits right now, and he hasn't played, 4 games? 5 games?
5 games counting today.
He's still the 4th leading rusher in the league. He has 937 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, 1,091 all-purpose yards. So just to show you, just to kind of put that in the back of your mind as we go through this list, how dominant this dude was. I mean, there was a stat, he's like 79% of the Titans' offense, and we've seen the Titans do well at times without him and kind of sputter at times. And I really don't think it helps matters much down in Tennessee either with all the injuries with other weapons. But number 5 on this list is your boy Najee Harris. Good old Naj. 646 and 4 touchdowns. And I think what kind of shocks me about this 2Ks is I actually thought that he would be over 1,000 by now. But I think it goes to show you how bad that offensive line is. If you watched any of that game on Thursday, Ben had 0 time to throw. And to be 100% honest, I didn't watch a minute of the second half of that game. That was a blowout at halftime. Granted, Kurt made some untimely turnovers. Ben kind of capitalized and had a pitch and catch to Freiermuth there at the end of the game that, regardless of what Chase or what Claypool did, as bonehead as that was, almost won it. Almost won it. It took a hell of a play from Harrison Smith to knock that out. But no, I just going by off of what we saw him do at Alabama, which kind of goes to show you that Alabama's line is way better than the Pittsburgh line. But will he be that type of Le'Veon Bell role? Absolutely. Absolutely. With the right players around him. He can't do it by himself. But yeah, he's our number 5 rusher. One that kind of shocked me at number 4, Antonio Gibson. 800 yards even, 5 touchdowns. And I think we've seen kind of him mature as Tyler Heineke has matured. That Washington team started out getting the dog shit blown out of them by the Cowboys today, came back and made that a game. Made that a game. I really like Heineke. I like him a lot. Is he going to be a top 5 passer in the league? No, but the kid's got grit. He's got guts. I'd play for him. But I think a lot of his success is stemming from Gibson. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, they have good receivers there too.
Scary Terry.
Yeah, and injuries have played a toll with him. And, and today I think he left right at the beginning of the game with concussion.
I want to say it was the third quarter.
Was it the third quarter when he went down? Well, he never did anything the whole game because he never caught a pass. So I thought he was gone earlier, and then I was reading after the game that he had the concussion. So, but yeah, look. Nobody expected Heineke to be running this team at the beginning of the year. And, this was supposed to be Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He's kind of Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0, if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Without
Fitzpatrick's, he's a better thrower. I mean, he's
got more swag, too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
The beard and the jorts.
Yeah.
Fuck
yeah. You can't. Because, I mean, the story about this team at the beginning of the year was how good this defense
sucked ass.
Well, this defense is what let them down. I mean, offensively, they haven't been great, but they've been good enough to win games, especially in this division where Dallas.
Did we really expect the offense to be on calibers, or up to par with Dallas?
Everybody was saying that their defense was going to be great, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to be just good enough to win this division.
Sure,
because nobody really expected the Cowboys to be where they're at right now. And the Cowboys really haven't
started off great.
You started off great, and then you watch them, and you're like, "What the fuck? What are these guys doing?"
Well, Zeke's been hurt. Back. Pollard's been hurt. Yeah. That whole. I think every one of the wide receivers has been on the COVID list at least once. They've been banged up.
And then I love the guy. I love Dak, but some Sundays you watch him, and it's like you can't do anything wrong. And then you watch him, and it's like, "What the fuck is this guy seeing? What is he doing?" It's just been, and even today, I mean, he started off pretty good. It was solid in that game. I think at one time it was 21-0. You thought they were just going to walk away with it, and then he throws 2 picks, and it just got it just got shitty. It wasn't. That whole second half was not clean. Very easily could have blew that game if they were playing against an opponent that did have, a better quarterback, a better offense. They would have been in some trouble today.
And Dallas is getting scary too, because I want to say this is the first time since week 1 that a lot of those defensive starters have played.
They're starting to get some guys back. But at the same time, they got guys that are, banged up. Zach Martin got banged up today on that offensive line. He's one that they cannot afford to lose. But defensively, getting DeMarcus Lawrence back is huge. As for the pass rush, the rookie Parsons from Penn State has just been.
What do you have? His 12th sack today.
Yeah, he is that guy. I was pumped when they drafted him, and he was the guy that I wanted going into that draft, and he was able to fall to them. They got him, but I never would have dreamed he'd be as good as what he is.
No, he is an absolute stud.
I mean, this guy, they're talking about him being Rookie of the Year, and I think it's safe to say he is going to be the Rookie of the Year. He might be the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, it might become down to him and Diggs. Yeah. I think those are the two dudes that jump off the page at you right away. Mm-hmm. But let's jump back into our list here. Number 3, Nick Chubb, 867 yards, 6 touchdowns. Dude's at number 3 and missed like 4 or 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And again, dude that shares a backfield. So, I mean, if this was back in the day, where, the number 1 dude here, Najee Harris, they're pretty much the only backs in the backfield. Cleveland has Chubb and Kareem Hunt that are both electric. And then we even saw that, what was his last name? Johnson, something like that. Come out of nowhere and have a fucking game on that. I believe it was like a Thursday night game.
Yep.
And that was the game that he's been on my fantasy bench the whole time because I didn't start him like an idiot. But no, coming out of college, it was either you were on Chubb or you were on Sony Michel. Sony Michel goes to New England, where you never really know which running back is going to get the ball, or if any. Unlike on Thursday night or last week, whenever it was, when they threw the ball 3 times. But now I believe Michel's with the Rams now. Is that right?
Yep. We're going to see him get a shot tomorrow night.
He had a huge game last week. Huge game. So that Georgia backfield was kind of stacked with those two dudes, and it's finally cool to see that both of them are kind of finding their own, getting to where, they are becoming a very, very important piece to each other's offense. So kind of cool to see. And obviously, number 2 on this list, Joe Mixon. And kudos to Joe Mixon, because for a lot of years in his career, he shared the backfield with Giovanni Bernard. Seemed like Bernard always got the hype, always got the pub. And Joe Mixon was kind of like that left out dude, or like the third down back. And I never really understood why, because I always thought he was better than Bernard. Mm-hmm. So just adds another weapon for Joe Burrow. And that team's been up and down. They've shown flashes of greatness. They've shown flashes of suckiness. That team is super young. So I think at the end of the day, probably not. They might sneak into the playoffs this year. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I do foresee that Bengals team becoming extremely dangerous in the next couple of years. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. And well, they got their quarterback, and that was a thing for them that they had Andy Dalton for a long time. Andy Dalton was just mediocre. Yeah. He was very, very mediocre. He wasn't bad. He was like the guy we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. I compare him like with the Garoppolo, with the Kirk Cousins. Are they good enough to get the job done? Yeah. Are they good enough to win playoff games? Fuck no, it ain't gonna happen. Garoppolo was fortunate enough to get himself to a Super Bowl. It's because they fucking ran the ball for about 300 yards against Green Bay in a game, and I mean they just ran the ball all over the place. And then they ran into Chiefs team that had a quarterback that could throw the ball, and they got wiped out. So those are my feelings on that. But yeah, Joe Burrow is a stud, and so. And Jamar Chase, who we were talking about earlier, Joe Mixon, obviously they have the weapons. Yes, T. Higgins, they have the weapons.
They have
the defense right now is, and for a long time, the defense is what carried the Bengals. Well, now the defense is, to me, is what's lacking a little bit. Yeah. they get some better players there. Like you said, they're very young. They're not very consistent right now. That's what happens when you have a young team. Yeah, these guys are going to be fine. Like they have a shot. They might sneak into the playoffs this year. We'll see. It's going to be close there. Obviously, the teams ahead of them in their division, they can't seem to really figure it out. Ravens lost another one today.
And lost Lamar for who knows how long.
Yeah. Yep. So, and Cleveland.
Cleveland's
you got Baker Mayfield right now. You're looking at that division. If Lamar's down, and who knows how long he's going to be down for, Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in that division. So,
hands down. And I really don't think it's a shock that our boy, pretty sure we were endorsing him before most anybody, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor leads the league, 1,205 yards, 16 touchdowns. Kudos to you, my friend. Kudos to you. We here at the Turbo and 2K show, we've always been a huge fan of yours, even going back to Wisconsin. So good to see him up there. We kind of saw what JT was going to be probably the second half of last year after he kind of emerged as the kind of go-to guy in that backfield. Marlon Mack, his injury last year kind of opened the door for a lot of Taylor's success, and then starting out this year, they knew who their guy was, and they've been, aside from one game where when the Colts played Tampa, they pretty much rode him, and rightfully so, because when you got a guy like that, you're the number one rushing team in the NFL. Give the dude the ball. Give the dude the ball, and he's one of those dudes, 2Ks, that seems like as the game goes on, he gets stronger. So
yeah, and it seemed like at the beginning of the year, the Colts started off this season 0-3.
They're horrible.
But it was they weren't giving, like you said, feed him the rock. He's the best player on your team. You're running behind a great offensive line, maybe the best offensive line in football. Give him the ball, and it seemed like those first couple of games, and it wasn't like they were getting blown away to where the running game should have went away. They were in that game, and Taylor was getting 14, 15 carries. Well, these games were when we've started seeing the Colts turn their season around, start winning games, and turn into a playoff contender. We started seeing 23, 24, 25 carries, and then the numbers were going up where he was rushing for over 100 every game, 3 or 4 touchdowns in games.
Didn't he have a 5 touchdown game?
Yeah, I mean, just feed him the rock. You got to find ways to get your best player the ball.
Absolutely,
it doesn't matter. The team that is the best at it in all of football are the Titans. When Derrick Henry's healthy, you look at his numbers, and he's getting the ball 32, 33 times all the way down the stretch of the season. That guy has single-handedly ran that team into the playoffs for what?
The last
2-3 years in a row?
Yeah. And with the Colts, I have a feeling it was one of those things where they knew what they had in Taylor. They didn't know what they had in Carson Wentz. So he's the new shiny toy. You got to run out and see what he can do. And there were plays, and it's still, Carson will have like 2 plays a game that you're just like, is he closing his eyes and throwing it? As Pat McAfee would say, he just drops back off his back foot and just goes, fuck it. And it really does seem like that's what he does.
Sure.
And I want to say he threw an interception left-handed into the fucking end zone. So does he play like his hair's on fire? Yes. Is it really necessary? No. No, not at all. Not at all. Not when you got Taylor in the backfield. And with the emergence of Taylor, we've seen Michael Pittman Jr. have a very, very, this is the best season he's had so far. And so it's I think if the Colts do get into the playoffs, they're going to be a very scary team to play. Very scary team.
Agreed.
Let's jump over to the quarterbacks, 2Ks. They get all the money. They get all the hype. Number 5 on this list, Patty Mahomes. It's weird to think that this dude is a top 5 quarterback, even though we've sat here and been like, what the fuck is the matter with this Chiefs offense? I really don't get it. Why are they losing games? Yeah, their defense blows, but we've seen this Andy Reid story where the offense is scoring, 35, 37 points a game to win 35-30, something like that. We've seen the story, but that hasn't been the case this year. I want to say on there they did win quite handily today, but leading up to today, I want to say in their 5-game winning streak, Mahomes has had only multiple touchdowns in one of those games.
Mm-hmm.
And he's number 5 on this list, 33-84 with 25 passing touchdowns. To me, it's not a shock at number 4, Justin Herbert, 35-47, 27 touchdowns. And what kind of gets me with Herbert 2Ks is he's second year, but I think he's a prisoner of his own success. He came out of the gate last year on fire. And has he regressed this year? No, but he's still a young player. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, a new coach, a new offensive coordinator, the whole thing.
Yep.
Regardless of all that, regardless of the record, regardless of how this team is doing, I'm 100% on board with J. Herb.
Oh, absolutely. To me, he's still the best quarterback in that class from last year, and that's saying something because Joe Burrow's in that class.
Tua sneakily is coming along.
And he's had a good year, but
the team just sucks.
But Herbert is above all those guys. He was awesome last year. He was even better. He's gotten even better this year. Mm-hmm. To me, with a young quarterback, it's consistency a little bit. There's just some times where you watch him and he's just not very sharp. And then you watch him for 2 or 3 weeks in a row and he's great. Mm-hmm. And then he has that game where he comes back and just shows you that he is, a sophomore in this league. Yeah. But no, the kid is a stud. He's just going to continue to get better and better. He's going to get more familiar and comfortable with the offensive coordinator, with the head coach there, with his teammates. Mm-hmm. I expect this guy to compete throughout his career for a lot of MVPs.
And I think too, with his success, they're going to be able to build more around him. And yeah, I'm super stoked for him. I'm always been nice catch. Yeah, the Bears are kind of having their way with this Green Bay offensive line 2Ks. So it'd be kind of interesting to see. This is without Marlon or without Mac. So, But yeah, that's number 3 on this list. That was number 4. Excuse me. Number 3, Matt Stafford. Probably not a big surprise that we have one of the top 5 quarterbacks on here, considering the number 1 receiver was Cooper Kupp. But Matt Stafford, 36-11, 30 touchdowns. And I'm pretty sure both you and I will agree it's not a shock to see Mr. Stafford on this list. No. Regardless of the success of his team, his individual success is just his peace of mind, his aura, his whole being has to be happier. I mean, for one, you're out in California, not in Detroit. The weather's a big thing out there. You got a brand new stadium, which is state of the art. You actually have an ownership that will spend money. That with the trades they made with Von Miller, and we've already touched on OBJ. They want to win now. They don't give a shit about first round picks.
They have to win now. Yeah. I mean, with everything that they've invested. Everything that they've invested into this in the last couple of years, with the big names that they have, the trades that they've made, giving up all these draft picks, bringing in Stafford this year, obviously they had to get better at the quarterback position, and Stafford was a huge boost. But they didn't do that just to get to the playoffs. They did that to win the Super Bowl. To me, there's more pressure on this team to win the Super Bowl than there is pressure on anybody else in the entire 100%. League. Like, this team has to win now, and that window is going to continue to get smaller and smaller every year that goes by.
Yeah, and because Stafford's got a lot of miles on his body, too, Case. He's gotten a lot of hits. He's went through a lot of punishment there in Detroit. So, yeah, he's definitely not. I wouldn't put him as a candidate that would be playing into his well into his 40s like Brady, just because Brady has probably taken at least 80% less hits. Yeah. So, number 2, probably the shocker on this list, but he was number 1 for the longest time, was Derek Carr. 3,663 yards, 17 touchdowns. That team stinks. Yeah. That team absolutely. I mean, yes, they're probably not a team in the league that's had more dumb shit happen to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts off with the emails and John Gruden, and then we go to The unfortunate thing that happened with
Ruggs.
Yeah, with Ruggs, and then Waller's down. The defense is, horrible.
Yeah, the defense is bad. Derek Carr is a good quarterback. He's a very solid quarterback. We talked earlier where we've mentioned 3 different names that are kind of in that mediocre category. I think he's above that mediocre. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a quarterback
needs to get
that
paid.
can. Yes, I think he's a quarterback that can win a lot of games. But he's playing with the Raiders, and it just seems like that franchise can make themselves into a mockery every single season that goes by, and we saw it firsthand this year with the Gruden thing, and then the Henry Ruggs just idiotic, and then and now Darren Waller not being on the field, like they're just down to like nothing. Hunter Renfrow.
I was gonna say
he's a stud. I'll give it to him. He's a stud. But he's the only thing that they have going right now.
Twitter was blowing up today, taking bets on an over/under, how long it's going to take him to be a Patriot. And you know what?
He would fit right in right there. Jeez.
That seems like a foregone conclusion that dude will end up at one point in time in his career with Belichick. But speaking of Bill Belichick, always go hand in hand with Mr. Tom Brady, who leads this list. 3,771 yards, 34 touchdowns. TB12 is probably going to put these numbers. I've come to grips with it, 2Ks. He's probably going to throw for 3,500 yards at age 50. Just because. Just because. And if you were on if you were betting on that game today, and if you happen to take the rushing over for Mr. Brady, you probably hit big time, because usually his over-under is like 1.5 yards. And there was at one point he probably had 35 rushing yards. So kudos to you if you did take that line.
I think at this point right now, this point in the season, obviously we have a lot of football to be played yet until we get to the playoffs, and got a lot of huge games to be played yet. But at this point, Brady's got to be the MVP. Or this guy right here, Aaron Rodgers playing right now. It's got to be down to those two guys.
The only thing that, in records aside, stats aside, just what's went down this year with Aaron Rodgers, I think is going to keep him from winning that. But hands down, those two guys are the two best players in the NFL right now. Right now. So,
if you can go, I've talked a lot about him. Especially about how much I just love watching him play. But Kyler Murray, if you take away him missing the 4 or 5 weeks there due to the ankle injury, the guy is he's unbelievable. Watching him, I'm looking forward so much to that game tomorrow night, because I think it's just going to be, an awesome game to watch when you got Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, and obviously both of those offenses that are just loaded. And to me, there should be points just thrown up all over the place.
And we're going to have to watch the game because there's no Manning cast.
Yeah.
I really like the Manning cast.
Which I do too. Games like that, though, I don't really mind not having them where it's a good game.
And like a snoozer.
Yes. Yeah. Now, when you get a shit football game, like it seems like the last few of our Monday night games, obviously the last week with the 55-mile-an-hour winds, and you can't do anything other than run the ball. That game was so boring to watch that I had to flip it over there to the Manning cast just to get something out of it, because I was so bored trying to watch that shit.
During that Manning cast, I gained a little bit of respect for Joe Buck, because
he was on it.
Yeah,
he was on it. I will admit that he was on it. I don't know, that son of a bitch has never made me laugh one time in my life. No, he made me laugh. I don't know if it was I did not laugh. I chuckled. He made me chuckle. I chuckled. But no, I'm with you. I don't know what was going on, but he was. It
Screen
seemed like
past whatever the hell his name is.
Yeah, it was like
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Maybe he's not as bad as I thought he was. All the respect in the world for the Dallas Cowboys. They are my favorite team, but Troy Aikman fucking drives me nuts too.
Yeah.
So maybe him getting away from Aikman, maybe that made him a little bit better. I don't know.
Maybe Troy's the stick up Joe's ass is what you're saying?
It could be. As much as I rooted for him when he was playing in my younger days and of watching the Cowboys when they were, great quarterback, but he was, a part of a great all around team. but I can't stand to listen to him. I cannot stand to listen to him.
Well, 2Ks, let's jump over to this playoff predictor here. I know for those of you watching on the YouTubes, the NFL Week 14 is second, but this is a little bit more pressing because, hell, this is what I made the thumbnail for. It's according to everyone's predictions, 2Ks, we're gonna have a Brady Belichick Super Bowl. That's where everything is pointing. That's where everything is pointing. Do I agree with that? No. But let's take a gander at the and these were I'm on the New York Times 2021 NFL playoff picture. Every team's chance to win the playoffs, and they have it broken down percentage to make the playoffs, win the division, get the first round bye, which in the playoffs this year the number 1 seed gets the first round bye, and the chance to win the Super Bowl. And indeed, the AFC, the Patriots have a 13% chance to win the Super Bowl, a 45% chance to get that bye, 74% to win the division, 98% to make the playoffs. I can't really foresee a situation where the Pats do not make the playoffs. And after the Bills' performance today, I think it's safe to say that they're going to lock that division up. The Dolphins are the Finns. They're making a nice comeback. I did not see if they won today or not. No, because they're on a bye, but they've won 5 straight. The Jets suck. They are officially eliminated. And then in the AFC North, and granted, this was before today. So these will change. The Ravens have a 3% chance to win the Super Bowl, 2% chance to get the bye, 44% to win the division, 71% to make the playoffs, followed by the Bengals, the Browns, and the Steelers. And with the Steelers only have an 11% chance to make the playoffs. I think they're dead. I think the Browns are dead. The Bengals, I think, are the only other team in this division treading water. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I can't jump on board with the Patriots. I just can't. Their defense is very, very good. Mac Jones has been way better than I ever would have expected.
I agree.
But man, I just can't jump on that yet. Like, they still have a lot of question marks at receiver that I can't. You know, they're gonna run into some big time teams now.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to,
Meanwhile, the Bears are going to be
up
10-0.
And I keep on looking at it, and I'm trying to talk myself out of it because I just don't want to see the Patriots in there. But if they are gonna make it, the AFC is the way you want to go right now this year, because the NFC to me is a lot tougher road.
Yes.
But can I put New England right now ahead of Kansas City when the playoffs start? I can't. No, I can't. Kansas City,
especially
their defense has figured it out. They're starting to play better on that side of the ball. Mahomes is getting better. Patrick Mahomes or Mac Jones. Who am I taking? Patrick Mahomes. Then you start looking at the receivers. I'm taking Tyreek Hill over anybody. And you look at the tight end position. I'm taking Travis Kelce. Like, I would probably pick 3-4 guys on that Kansas City team before I wanted to pick a guy for the Patriots on that. No, the defensive side of the ball, the Patriots are better. The coaching, Bill Belichick has the nod. Even though Andy Reid is a very good coach, Bill Belichick still takes the nod.
Probably two of the sloppiest dressed coaches in NFL history. But yeah, but no, and it's funny you mentioned the Chiefs 2Ks because they're also 13% to win the Super Bowl. So and they're kind of running. They're 9-4 with going into today. The Chargers were 8-5. Both of them won today. So they're not running away with this division by any means, but it kind of seems like it. You know, they flipped that proverbial switch right when they needed to. Now I think it's going to come down to the Chiefs' success is going to be linked to that offensive line very, very much. The defense, like you said, has kind of righted the ship. The offense seems to be riding the ship, but the offense goes as that offensive line goes, because even as great as Patrick Mahomes is, those weapons are, when every quarterback is better when they're comfortable in the pocket. Let's be honest. even Lamar Jackson. So if that offensive line was beefier, was better, was more, more locked in, I think you'd see that 13% be even higher. But I think the division is they're 96% to make the playoffs, 71% to win the division, whereas the Chargers are 27% to win the division. So now the one on the AFC that shocks me is still the Titans.
Yes, that's who I just wanted to talk about.
9-4. They won today. Granted,
they get Derrick Henry back. They get him back.
Yeah.
They ride this ship and they they just do
Derrick Henry.
Yes, and they just do what they need to do, which they've done to this point. They've done it. I mean, they're gonna win. They're gonna win their division. I mean, unless something crazy happens. The Colts obviously are playing a lot better.
Yes.
We talked about them earlier. I expect them to win games down the stretch, but I don't know if they can, if they can cut that gap. Well, we got 4 weeks left, and they're 2 games down. Can they cut that gap and win that division? I think their odds are better at, going for a wild card there. So I think Tennessee is going to end up winning that division.
I do too.
So you get through the regular season, then you get a healthy Derrick Henry back, a rested Derrick Henry back, and you roll into these playoffs like they were rolling at the beginning of the year when they were handing him the football.
And yet, what was it?
Look out for them. I don't want to play that. I don't want to play against Derrick Henry.
In a healthy, it was A.J. Brown. Is that right?
Yeah.
He's been on the shelf.
Julio came back today.
Yeah.
I mean, so no, this is not. They are not. If Derrick Henry comes back, this is not a team I would want to face in the playoffs. Where
I don't want to coach. I don't want to face a Mike Vrabel coach team in the playoffs any year, regardless if Henry's back. Just Vrabes has that aura about him that just scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the rest of their schedule, and I just can't see them.
Do they play the
giving
Colts
up
again?
a 2-game lead? And they do not, and they play the Steelers next week.
That's a win.
Yeah, I agree. Niners, I think, is a tough game, but I still would probably give them the nod. The Dolphins, I give them the nod there.
Dolphins are hot. They're scary hot.
And then week 18, Texans. I mean, that's a win. So I just don't see them giving up that division. I think they win that division easy.
Yeah.
And they don't even need to really even try to get Henry back. And
definitely don't need to rush him back.
Save him. You save him and you try to and you win that. You do what you need to do, win the division, and then the possibility of him coming back to start the playoffs is scary to me.
Yeah, and let's not rule out either that the possibility of, because they're tied with the Pats and with the Chiefs for that. I mean, record wise. Mm-hmm. For that first round bye. So if they do happen to sneak in and get that bye, give even more time for Henry to get back, who the fuck knows? Let's switch over to the NFC side, 2Ks. Let's start off with your boys. There's a 6% chance to win the Super Bowl, and definitely after today, they have won that division.
Yes.
They have won that division. Like we said, Washington, they coming into the season, I did bet pretty heavy on them winning this division. I, in time, did pull my money, so I did not win a whole lot. But, that and the rest of that division stinks. The Giants stink. The Eagles had a nice little run. Jalen Hurts stinks. That whole team stinks.
What I'm curious about with Dallas here, because like you just said, they have won this division, and I don't think that they're good enough to compete with some of these other teams for that home field advantage or for the bye.
No. I think that's going to come down to Green Bay or Arizona.
I totally agree. So I don't think they're going to be able to catch them. My thing with them is they got to get healthy, and I mean at the running back position. Mm-hmm. Look, with the injury that you have to Pollard, I don't know if they will get him back. The injury to Zeke he's been battling that all season long.
Yeah.
It's a knee injury. It's probably not going to get a whole lot worse, but it's probably not going to get much better either. My thing is, you got to start thinking about resting them a little bit.
Yeah.
Get some of these other guys, a chance. Today it was Clement that they had running out there.
Mm-hmm.
They got to find that backup because Pollard's been very, very important to them.
Yes.
And I hope that he can come back, but with that, it's the foot injury that he has. It sounds like there's probably not a very good chance that he does get healthy.
Yeah.
And even can be half of himself. So they're gonna have to find an answer at the backup, and maybe it is time to have Zeke just take a break for a couple weeks.
Or at least a week.
Yeah, and
I'm pretty sure if I do remember their schedule, they do have the Giants coming up. So
yeah, they have the Giants next week. They don't need either one of them to beat them, and they have Washington again. After that, again, I mean, it's a meaningless game at this point. And then you have the Cardinals, and then which the Cardinals is going to be a tough game, and then you finish out the season with the Eagles. Yeah. So they have 3 conference opponents that they're going to play in the last 4 games. But to me, I mean, all they got to do is win one. They win the game against the Giants, and they clinch that division next week. So
the Giants are just so beat up, and
yeah, they don't even have. They're starting Mike Glennon right now at quarterback.
Didn't know he was still in the league until today. And there's Lions fans that are clamoring for the Lions to trade for Danny Dimes, and I'm like, what?
Why?
He's not any better than what you have right now. No. And to be honest with you, I would much rather have Goff than Dimes any day. But
I'd rather have not either one and start from scratch. But I get where you're going.
If you put gun to my head and I had to choose one, yeah. But Packers are pretty much locked up the North. They have a 10% chance to win the Super Bowl, 28% chance to get the bye. Vikings are dead. Bears are, even though they're winning 10-0 right now, they're 4-8, and of course the Lions have been officially eliminated. Bucks are leading the NFC South, 13% chance to win the Super Bowl, and they pretty much have that division locked up. The rest of the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers, who knows what any one of those 3 teams are, and the Saints are so just beat up that.
Oh, I know that's just sad with them. It's because. One of the most well-coached teams in the league. You have a great defense, and they have so many weapons on the offensive side of the ball, but they just can't. They just haven't been healthy. They haven't been able to have all of them healthy at the same time once this year.
And Taysom Hill showed some pizzazz, showed some spark. Broke his finger, which I'm sure didn't help matters up much, but. Just sitting there and leaning and go, like, hey, you're definitely out of it this year. Mm-hmm. Give Ian Book some run. Mm-hmm. Couldn't hurt. But the NFC West probably is the most loaded division, top to bottom. However, the Cardinals did secure a playoff berth today, or actually last week. But they're an 11% chance to win the Super Bowl. 40% chance to get that bye. So they are 1 game up on the Bucks and the Packers. So those 3 teams are pretty much the class of the NFC 2Ks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are kind of riding on a Tampa train that Tom Brady's going to lead them to another one, and a lot of people are on Green Bay. Nobody really talks about this Arizona Cardinals team. It seems like every single time you turn on any kind of podcast on Monday, and it's McAfee's Overreaction Monday, or if it's anything on ESPN, everybody's talking about it's been a different team every week. Sometimes it's Green Bay that everybody's jumping on. One time this season, people were jumping on Buffalo like they were the best team in the league. And then the next week rolls around, and it's back on the Brady train. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever talking about this Arizona Cardinals team, who to me has probably been maybe the most consistent team of anybody all season long.
How are they 10-2 when Colt McCoy starts like 3 games? Yeah. 4 games, I think.
They lost one. The one key game that they lost was the Green Bay game. Yeah, and it was at home. Green Bay's on the road, and they went in there and beat Arizona. So that's the one game, but I think this Arizona team is kind of the team to beat right now. If I was going to pick right now who I thought it was going to be in the Super Bowl, I would go Cardinals and Chiefs.
That would be a hell of a Super Bowl. Yeah, I would definitely tune in, and Cliff Kingsbury needs a Super Bowl ring. He does. They've made a lot of, to me, looking at all the free agent acquisitions over the offseason, They bring in J.J. Watt, and they're still winning with Watt on the shelf, possibly for the entire year. Look at a dude like James Conner that was pretty much left for dead in Pittsburgh. And I know he didn't make our leader list, but I'm almost positive he's first or second in rushing touchdowns. Granted, a lot of those are short yardage, but we saw him their last game have over. I mean, he had a huge game. 2 or 3 touchdowns, a lot of rushing yards, and was. I mean, granted, if I remember correctly, that game was pretty much out of hand. But that was Kyler's first game back off injury. Hopkins, his first game back off injury. So we've talked about a lot of players and a lot of teams getting healthy at the right time, and you definitely have to include this Cardinals team because they're just nasty. Yeah, they are just nasty, and you are 100% right. They don't get the hype, they don't get the pub that they deserve.
And and probably a lot of it has to do with it's in Arizona. It's Arizona. Yeah. But
it's not the left coast. It's not the east coast.
I'd say, to me, though, with these playoffs getting ready to, I mean, we still have like another month until they do start, but it's getting close. It's what we're looking at right now in the NFC. Like, this has the makings to be so exciting to watch for, 2 weeks leading up to that, to the Super Bowl there. Going through just the quarterbacks. You got Kyler Murray with Arizona. You got Tom Brady with the Bucs. You got Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay. You got Dak Prescott with Dallas. You got Matthew Stafford with the Rams. Like, there's no easy win.
No.
All those teams, and eventually these teams are gonna have to start playing. Are gonna play against each other in the playoffs, and you can't look at any of those teams and be like, that's an easy win, because you got to go through every quarterback I just named off right there is a top 6-7 quarterback in the league, and you got to go through those quarterbacks to win each week. You go to the AFC, and obviously you have Patrick Mahomes, who a lot of people would probably say might be the best quarterback in the league. I don't know if I can say that this year. I don't know. That's close, but when you start looking at the other quarterbacks in that, the second best quarterback in the AFC right now is probably fucking Mac Jones.
Yeah. And he's definitely, I'm almost positive he has the highest completion percentage out of any quarterback in the league.
I take that back. I'd say he's third. I have to go with they'll probably end up being the wild card, but Justin Herbert with the Chargers. I would take Herbert over Mac Jones.
And to your point, 2Ks, I think what as frustrating as it was, both on the betting side, the fantasy side, and hell, even the watching side, just the complete chaos that this season has been. This complete season of chaos is leading us up to those matchups that you just described. And I think that's the product of this madness, is you never know what the hell's going to happen from week in to week out. Pretty much the only thing you can bet on is, and with great certainty, is when you give Bill Belichick some points, most time he doesn't even need them.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing that I've learned betting-wise this whole NFL season. And for Belichick to be getting points is very rare. It's very rare. And I think this chaos of a season is going to wrap up and probably give us some of the best playoff football that we've seen in quite a while. Because I don't think, even if there is a team backdoor in, like a Bengals, or any of the other teams that we've kind of talked about, it's not an easy win. Even if you do have the home field advantage, it's not going to be an easy win. Now, again, getting back to the old adage, especially in football, home field advantage does play a part when you're a Green Bay, when you're a New England, where you're playing in the elements. We saw it with the New England Buffalo game. Horrible game to watch, but yeah, both those teams should know how to play in the cold.
I mean, for how many years have we watched, Green Bay and
the frozen
Aaron
tundra
Rodgers,
of land,
gets that home field advantage, or Tom Brady with New England, and that was a huge home field advantage to get there and play there. Now with him being in Tampa, I don't think it's not so much.
Maybe early in the season, just because of the humidity and shit, but
like
at this time of year, no.
If you're Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, I think he would much rather see quarterbacks Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott come into play against him there in Green Bay than Tom Brady, because the weather's not going to phase Tom Brady.
No. Tom Brady, even though he's taken his little sabbatical down in Tampa, hasn't forgotten to play in the cold.
And then even I'll throw Matthew Stafford in there too. Matthew Stafford hasn't played a whole lot of cold weather games either. Even though it was cold in Detroit,
it was still 70.
It was still 70 and nice inside. So, and he hasn't played games that time of the year ever.
No, ever. I mean, this is probably going to be it's the longest season in history, but it's going to be the longest season in Matthew Stafford's career, because he's only made the playoffs like twice, I think, and was one and done.
Yep.
So
I mean, and tomorrow night with the game between the Cardinals and Rams, I think it's huge for Kyler Murray, because if there's a quarterback out of these guys that we listed that can benefit from the home field advantage more than anybody, it's him, because he's the one I would be worried about having to make that trip up north and play, or really having to make that trip and go anywhere and play. I think it's a huge game for him to lock it in and stay in Arizona and make these other guys have to go there to play him. And
quite possibly, too, start the nail in the coffin for that MVP vote. For the MVP vote. Well, 2K, is there any, out of all these lists that we kind of listed off here, the playoff predictor, the receivers, rushers, and quarterbacks, is there anything that you think was left off? Anything that kind of shocked you, stood out? Anybody that was left off of those lists that you kind of thought was going to be there?
Oh, I'm trying to think, man. It's, a lot of the...
It's definitely like we're definitely seeing not so much the quarterback. Well, even the quarterbacks too. A lot of new names.
Yeah.
A lot of new names. I mean, a lot of rookies, a lot of second-year dudes. A dude in Derek Carr that has been in the league for many years, but now finally statistically cracking the upper echelon, let's say. And, a dude that, like an Aaron Rodgers, who's been up there many, many times, and Justin Fields just threw a pick, possibly a pick six. Yep. And he falls. Okay. Yeah.
No, really nothing that shocked me about what you read off today.
I think Dalvin Cook, minus some injuries, would have been
injuries
up there.
played a huge factor there with him.
Obviously, huge injuries to Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
And if Derrick Henry
would have been number one. I mean, and I don't think it would have even been close.
He might have rushed for like 2,500 yards if he had played all year.
Kyler Murray, we talked about that. I think he would be right at the top of the list with quarterbacks if he wasn't out for as long as he was.
With all those passing yards that Brady has, and for him not to have any receiver, any one receiver on that top 5 list, just goes to show you how much he distributes the ball and really doesn't give a shit if he has a number 1 or not, because he's got dudes all over the place. Hell, the winning touchdown in overtime today was the dude's first target of the game. I don't even know who the fuck it is. It wasn't Goodwin. It wasn't Gronk. It wasn't insert receiver's name here. So I think it's neat to see that, because it seemed like for years there was always the same top 5 dudes: quarterbacks, receivers, running backs. It's kind of neat to see some of these, like the new blood, and I think it's going to even be more interesting to see where these guys end up with that extra game, to see how much extra, because I mean, obviously, you can't compare 17 games worth of stats to 16, so there's going to be the discrepancies between, even going back from the 14 game schedule to the 16, there was always, arguments of whose season was the best. But it's going to be interesting to see going forward, because I have a feeling this 17 games is going to lead into 18 games before too long, and just to see how these guys hold up. I think we're going to see an off season of, especially the teams that make a deep run into the playoffs, into the Super Bowl. How much more taxing is that extra week going to be when you do make that playoff push? Probably the Lions. It's not going to make that much a difference. One more game. But, and if the Bucs make a run, how much more taxing is that one game going to be on a 40-plus-year-old Tom Brady? In the grand scheme of things, it's probably not going to matter whatsoever. But
because he just seems like he doesn't even ever get touched.
no,
Like I'd be more worried about the guy that's playing right now.
yeah, with the pinky
who
toe.
looks like he's about 58 years old.
Yeah, well,
and
he does have a man bun too. So, but no, it's going to be interesting to see off season how, because you know, once the season's done, you're going to see a lot of these players coming out and just kind of it's going to be interesting to see what their reaction is, because we kind of saw it in baseball going from the 60 game last year to the full 162 this year. Especially the second year dudes going in, we saw a lot of them go down. A lot of you could just see that their bodies weren't ramped up enough. Granted, it's a whole different time frame, 100 more games as compared to one more. I get it, but in baseball, people aren't running into each other, having car crashes 50 times a game. So, yeah, it's a little bit more wear and tear on a body in one football game than 100 baseball games. But yeah, I it's going to be interesting to follow the postseason after the season, kind of get the players' reaction, kind of see where a lot of these dudes end up stat-wise. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it for you, 2K crew. Was there anything else we need to bring up here, 2Ks?
No, I think we covered it, man. I'm just this game tonight has just been kind of boring so far, but I'm so excited about tomorrow night's game.
Yeah,
Cardinals Rams. You know, these two teams meet again in the playoffs. I mean, these are two of the best teams in the NFL. Yeah, it's a lot to be excited about.
just wish there was a Manning cast. Just wish there was a Manning cast. Well, 2K crew will get you out on that. Everybody have a great week. Have a great week. And as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.